Welcome. Thank you for joining us here. The Universal Church of God Within, the family of God Within, where we discover the secrets to the universe, pretty much. We discover that God is alive and well, what God is, who we are in relation to that, and therefore, as we know ourselves, we regain our power and our place in the universe. So thank you for joining me here today as we will prove and give greater clarity on the existence of God in 5 minutes or less. Ready? Go. Okay. So, how to prove God exists through a logical deduction of information in 5 minutes or less. Okay. 4 minutes or less. Here we go. Alright, so everything that exists, everything is finite, meaning it has a beginning, it has an end. Everything that exists, because it has a beginning and an end, at one point, it didn't exist. Okay, so if you go backwards in what we call time, at one point, everything that exists, because it all had a beginning, if you go back far enough to just before the beginning of everything, then you have nothing. Okay, so everything that exists has a beginning, has an end, and therefore if you go back in time far enough, you'll come to a point where there was nothing. Okay, just before the beginning of everything that is finite. Okay, now if you have nothing, nothing cannot create something unless nothing is itself a being. Okay, unless it is no thing. So here's the first clue you have about what God is. It is not a thing. It is not finite. Therefore, it has no beginning and it has no end. And this is where everybody gets tripped up and can't understand what this thing called God is because with our finite understandings as human beings, expressing ourselves as things in these physical bodies, our bodies have a beginning and an end. And we associate ourselves with all things that have beginnings and endings, with all finite things. Okay, so it's hard for us to understand something that has no beginning and has no end, but this word nothing means exactly that. At this level of understanding, not a thing, not finite, no beginning, and no end. So the only thing that was, that is, and evermore will be, even without anything, is this eternity being. A being that is not a thing, that is beyond time, that is before time, that has no beginning and has no end, and therefore we and quantum physics and most people describe the being known as God as just that, eternal, having no beginning and no end. So there you have it. Logically, if you go back before the beginning of everything that exists, you have nothing. Okay? And unless nothing was not a thing, no thing, okay, not finite, no beginning, no end, then it can't create something. Okay? In other words, you have to have, and quantum physics is saying the same thing. All their experiments are showing that you can't have this reality or this holographic co-creation without the idea of mind, of consciousness entering into play. And they show and prove how consciousness is behind all of reality. Whether it's your consciousness, my consciousness, co-creative consciousness, universal consciousness, an all-pervading mind source. Okay, so there is a source that is beyond time, that is has no beginning, has no end, that is eternal, that is the source, the one source of all creation. And it is infinite. And if you logically just go back long enough in time in your mind, you'll realize there was a point where nothing existed, and you realize that it makes sense that only this eternal force that has the potential, that is infinite, could have the potential for all things that are finite and less than itself, and to create it. Okay, so here we have here in the Aquarian Gospel, chapter 58, verse 17, and it says, all things are thought. All life is thought activity. The multitude of beings are but phases of the one great thought made manifest. Lo, God is thought, and thought is God. Okay, so there you have it. Okay, logically, nothing can't create something unless you have the understanding that the nothing was a being and is a being in and of itself, that out of which all things came to exist within and for the pleasure of. And so there you have it. Logically, there must be consciousness. There is consciousness. Mind is the source of all of this. The very first thought and realization of itself as isness was I am. So there you have it, guys. Nothing, not a thing, beyond time, infinite, created, all that is, was, and evermore will be. Prove God exists in 5 minutes or less.